Hey, welcome back to Capital Report After Hours, where we kind of kick around the issues of the day in a little bit of a casual setting. Joining us, it was a free agent this year, moved his teams from the Hartford Courant to the Hearst newspaper, Dan Haar.
Signed a long-term contract.
You signed a long-term contract with the Hearst, and now you're reporting down, closer to New Haven. So, welcome to the set.
A lefty out of the pen. I can give long innings if necessary.
All right,
whatever it takes.
So when you look back at 2017, what sticks out in your mind?
Well, I mean, the number one thing is that we're keeping, no matter what we do, we're not moving forward on the economy, on jobs, on making the income tax add up. We lost $1.5 billion in the income tax over 2 years. That is the amount that we expected to collect in 2017-18 versus what we are going to collect is $1.5 billion difference. That really defines slow job growth. That really defines everything. It defines politics. It defines the fact that we still don't have a budget now exactly halfway through the year.
God, Ritter's sweating over there. Now
there you go. So I think it all comes down to that, and I don't know that there's an ideological reason for it. It's not because of higher taxes or lower taxes. It's more of a function of the grand scheme of the economy and Connecticut and what it has to offer.
But I'd also say that the income tax becomes more unreliable, and the changes in Washington are only going to further, perhaps, exacerbate those problems. We have things in Connecticut that we don't do that other states do around revenue that I think would help. We talked about tolls earlier. I think legalization of marijuana, it's not, that I wake up in the morning, that's the number one thing I want to work on. But if it's legal in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and New York, and you decriminalize it in Connecticut, at some point it's going to happen. Those kind of things provide revenue that we don't have now that I think are going to become more appealing to other governors, Republican or Democrat, in the future.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly.
So more revenue, higher taxes.
But it's not higher taxes, though. All the things I just mentioned are things that other states do. You're not in a non-competitive state. Whereas when you tax Social Security, that makes people leave. When you change income tax, that can change what people do. But the things I mentioned don't make us any more uncompetitive compared to our neighboring states.
July.
I was going to say, what about the environment, though? Because we're talking about, and I don't mean the green environment, I mean like the business environment, because we're talking about the fact that there are so many things. Yeah, you don't need that.
Okay, good. It's bothering me. Yeah.
So many things that are drawing money away, right? So is it people leaving? Is it the jobs are not here? Is it the economy that we're not setting up the right environment for the businesses?
It's the fact that we don't have a magnet city.
Yes.
Economies that work. Massachusetts, Western Massachusetts is not working in any sense that Connecticut isn't working. It's Boston is what it is. And it's the big 6 magnet cities in this country that are creating economic growth. And that's why it is absolutely madness that the Republican non-tax reform went after the big cities. Why? It's the engines of growth in the entire Western Hemisphere. That said, that's what Connecticut needs. You don't get it overnight. They should have put Jackson Lab in New Haven. There have been lots of errors that have happened. Marijuana sales, tolls, increasing the price of driver's licenses and registrations do not affect the business climate. Those are things that have to happen.
And Denny, and on a bright note, I know you did a piece recently about some bright spots in the Connecticut tech industry. So so the needle is moving a little bit.
The tech industry had 6 big sales led by Datto of Norwalk. That's the data security company, $1.5 billion. And the big thing about these sales is not the fact that they happen, it's that they happen, and the resulting company ownership has kept all of these operations in Connecticut. eTouch is in Norwalk, Datto, iDevice is a popular company we love to write about because of the shower thing. They got bought by Hubble, an old line Connecticut company. These are businesses that are staying here. There is a software hub in New Haven right here. Great news. Not enough to make up for the losses.
So now part of your responsibility is for the Bridgeport Post, the CT Post, to cover Bridgeport. How do you handicap the election going forward? Joe Ganim will probably announce first week of January that he's formally doing that. How does that story play out over the next 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months?
I think if he gets the nomination, it's going to be hard to deny him. He will go back to court as the nominee. And right now, he's about as strong as any Democratic nominee, with the exception of Aaron Stewart, who would be a great Democratic nominee.
Pretty sure Aaron's a Republican.
I understand that for now, but she does have a picture of Obama in her office still, with her arm around Obama from 2012.
He is the president.
He was the president, yes.
You gotta do that.
But as far as Ganim goes, he would go back to court, and I think a court would be hard-pressed to keep the $6.5 million of public financing as the nominee out of his hands, and I have to guess that's what he's hoping for. He's obviously keeping his he's running the city well right now, basically.
So what are you looking forward to in 2018? What's on the Dan Haar radar?
what's on the Dan Haar radar is that we're going to see a stabilization of the tax base in Connecticut, because there is an equilibrium that happens, and we're starting to hear about people in New York and Boston and Washington, D.C. that don't actually want to live 5 to an apartment. Yes, I get that my daughter is in her 20s and she wants to be in a big city too, but eventually you get a great lifestyle in Connecticut for a great job. The ratio of wages to lifestyle, wages to what you can buy in housing is higher and higher. Eventually we reach equilibrium, and that starts to stabilize the tax base, and that's what's going to start to happen.
So now you see an influx of people to Connecticut in 2020, a beginning.
Influx may be too strong a word. Maybe less outflux.
Don't backtrack, Dan. I like the train you're on.
Maybe the 22,000 people a year who are leaving, maybe let's start with 0.
Well, but how do we revitalize our cities? I mean, Bridgeport is a perfect example. I mean, is a casino the way out?
Well, right now there are a couple of companies that are the MMCT, the casino, the tribal group, and MGM that are offering to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in Bridgeport. Until we see that happening from somebody in the true private sector, I guess you could say MGM is true private sector, but in the industrial sector or in the commercial sector, I think you have to take that. I think you have to say that's what's available to you. And of course, that's not a great thing for the economy, but it's better than not $675 million.
All right, so it's going to be a fun 2018. Any predictions going down the line for 18?
I think that the stink of Donald Trump is going to outweigh the stink of Dan Malloy in the elections. I think both sides have an albatross around their necks. I think what's working for the Democrats is that Malloy has actually done a good job running the state. I think he's outperformed expectations. So bad was the underlying economy all these years. But maybe you could say that's a partisan.
I mean, it's hard to render me speechless, but oh my God, you may have just done that.
My producer just said in my ear, both Jody and Liz gasped and jumped back when Haar said that. So you may want to take a beat of that.
I'm trying to like catch my breath again. I mean, he's done a good job running the state. We're net down like 80,000 people in this state since he took over. The man is taken himself out of budget negotiations because he's so toxic. He can't even work with Democrats. I'm apoplectic over that. I have no idea even what to say about that.
He's not
He's got an approval rating of 20% or something. I mean, this is like absurd.
I think Dan, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're also getting at is the reality that many of the budget problems are unfunded liabilities that have been accruing for many, many decades to come, and that's been a challenge that any governor would have to inherit with very limited options to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is exactly, and he's cut the cost of government agencies. He's 12% down in headcount in government agencies. He didn't have, he's about half of the gaps that he's had to fill, mainly in 2011 and 2015 and this past year, have been through tax increases. The tax increase this year that he was tagged with $1.5 billion was a ridiculous myth put forward by one of the great news reporters of the state who got it wrong. And the bottom line is that the Democratic tax increase was about $400 million, and the Republican one, which, by the way, didn't add up, was about $250 million. These are not big tax increases at a time when you don't have investment that you need in the state.
I mean, I guess
we had the 2 largest tax increases in state history on his watch, and it's funny that you should mention the word gap, because I still don't think he's funding it.
And forget that, the political outcomes,
right.
the political outcomes, I think, you know, you can speak to. I mean, the House Republican caucus has doubled in size, and you've got a split chamber in the Senate. So I think, you know, the voters don't agree with you that the governors run the state very well either. I mean,
but I disagree with that, and I don't think it's indicative of the governor, but we need to look at the municipal elections. And the municipal elections showed that people are believing in Democrats, and we've turned many towns from red to blue, including one of the towns I represent, Southington, which had been a Republican stronghold for a long time. And these people went out and worked and had a message that said that we aren't the Democrats of old. We see what's going on. We need to invest in our future. And the key word there is invest. And until we stop constantly going off about how horrible Connecticut is and everyone's leaving in droves. You know, the people who are leaving are the middle class. So we need to now look at saving the middle class. The millionaires aren't leaving.
They're gone, so now what's left is the middle class.
There are now 6 more billionaires now than there were 6 years ago.
So the income tax receipts should be coming up then in April? We're expecting an influx?
We don't know. We'll have to take a look.
We will see.
Well, a lot of what's happening is that they're holding on to their investments, and now that they're waited for the big Trump tax breaks. Let's see what happens.
And
Well,
Republicans still control the majority of municipalities in this state.
Well, let's give Danny the out question here. So there's an article that was in the, I don't have it with me because I threw it away in a crumpled mess.
That was your
Yeah. So it was about Malloy being, Fasano says basically get lost, we'll run the state, let's let the lawmakers run the state. How does Malloy remain relevant as a lamest of lame ducks in 2018?
Well, in 2018, he doesn't necessarily have to remain relevant. He has to be part of the picture. And he becomes less relevant, but that doesn't matter, because I think he's done what he's done for 8 years. What Len Fasano and Themis Claridis had a chance to put forward a budget that worked, and what they did was they came up with a mythical cut of $124 million at UConn in the middle of an academic year, which is silly, and they came up with $300 million on a change in labor policy that may or may not happen 10 years from now. That's not governing, that's punting. Right? And they have some good ideas. The reforms they did are good ideas. They're much better at building consensus in a room than this governor is. I didn't defend his consensus building. I defended his handling of the economy compared to expectations. So the bottom line is he becomes less relevant, but it doesn't matter as much.
All right, the great Dan Haar. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.